bookshop. It's the bookshop. It's the bookshop of Beverly Farms.
Howdy, everybody. It is Sam Feifel, your host of John Updike's Ghost, your favorite little podcast about reading, writing, bookstores, having your mom come and decorate windows in the winter. And I am joined, as always, by my co-host, the co-owner of the bookshop of Beverly Farms, and all-around person with curly hair, Hannah Harlow. How are you doing today, Hannah?
It's a hectic day. Really happy to be sitting here recording the podcast after a morning of decorating the windows with mom and dad. It looks lovely in the store. We are ready for the holidays. We've got a million boxes here in the back. We've got tons of inventory on the floor, and we are good to go.
That is amazing. It is definitely, I know you don't care, person out there in podcast land, but this holiday season is rather important for us little retailers, as this is when we do roughly all of our business for the year. And it's something that we think pretty deeply about in terms of what books are going to be huge, what should we bring in the shop, how do we make sure when you come in looking for a present for somebody important that we have it on hand so you don't have to go and be evil with Amazon. We want to save you from yourselves is really what we want to do. But first, very importantly, we have these Polar Expresses that you can order and get personalized, but I'm worried that the people are going to be losing out on that opportunity by the time this actually publishes. Does that end on November 15th, that opportunity? Is that correct?
Pretty much. You could probably eke in by the 18th.
Oh.
But you know, if you're listening to this late, then we'll have signed copies. We're just going to have him sign extra stock. So it won't be personalized, but it will be signed. And he is a local North Shore person. So
Chris Van Allsburg is who you're talking about.
Chris Van Allsburg is who we're talking about.
Right. So if this podcast has just come out and it is not past November 18th, you should go on our site, search Polar Express, and follow the directions. You'll be able to get a signed copy of Polar Express, and it'll say, hey, little child of yours, I'm Chris Van Allsburg, and this is personalized for you. Merry Christmas. And what
or Clara.
Amazing.
Love Chris Van Allsburg. I mean, no love.
Keepsake. That would be. Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting that out of the way, we were thinking we would talk a little bit about the books that we think are going to be big in this holiday season, that we are going to have a bunch in the store because we either really like them and we want to make sure that they get in front of you, or we just know they're going to be a huge deal. So we thought we would run through those. This is not in any way because the last 2 weeks have been so hectic that we didn't read anything. That's for sure not the reason
we would never do that.
Never, ever would we do this. We are not lazy like that. However, we have, we are slaves to you people.
Slaves to commerce.
That's right.
Capitalism at your service.
Oh man, we are so good at capitalism here at John Updike's Ghost. So why don't we start, Hannah, with you? This was actually my wife Kristen's book club book this past month.
Oh, interesting.
People have heard us talk about James many times, but you think it's still going to be a big book, despite the fact that it got jilted for the Booker Prize last night.
Yes, it was the front runner for the Booker Prize. I guess I didn't really realize everyone thought it was going to win. It did not. We'll get to that in 1 second. But I still think James is still my pick. I think it is my pick for best novel of the year.
Whoa.
You've heard me talk about it before. I think it's, first of all, it's a good read, but I also think it's an important read. And it, just helps us recontextualize history and understand stories in a broader sense. And I will be shocked if it doesn't win some award. It has to win something. I also feel like my one prediction for the New York Times 10 Best of the Year list, I feel like this will be on it.
Has to be.
You never know what is going to be on it, but I sort of feel like, how could this not be on it? This is the one I'm like, it has to be.
Has to be. I think so because, and I think the fact that it can work so well in a place like a small town book group is, kind of evidence of how important it is because any of us who grew up as literary nerds are kind of impressed by what Percival Everett's been able to accomplish in terms of turning the story on its head and examining it in a new and different way and thinking about, how the story of Huckleberry Finn has had this impact on us as just Americans, right? Like it's one of those shared texts. It's a shared cultural touchstone that if you've been to high school in the United States, you've probably encountered Huckleberry Finn. And what does that sort of do to us as a people, and how by re-examining that story can we sort of examine ourselves as a culture and that kind of thing. And I think it really works that way in a non sort of academic and non-didactic way. It's something
and
that's very accessible.
Like it's really accessible. So, those awards and that New York Times list really drive sales, especially for fiction. So that's why I'm also thinking that sales will kind of continue and re-jumpstart. And sales have been really consistent on that book ever since it came out. And it has not really dipped. And actually, you see it jump up every once in a while as it gets new hits and new attention. So I think that's going to be strong and steady through the end of the year.
Totally. Let's talk a little bit about the book that did win the Booker Prize last night.
Yes.
It is a book called Orbital by Samantha Harvey. And the reason I'm so curious about it is because I feel like this book very much should have been very high on my radar. It's about 6 astronauts on the International Space Station. They start to wonder, what is life without Earth? What if we just lived by ourselves? And it gets into this really interesting examination of what it is to be human and humanity and lost in space and our role in the universe and all that kind of stuff, which is like, right down the middle fastball for me. And yet this award is actually one of the first times I've heard of it. Why hasn't this been like super high in the discourse? And do you think now it will hit, or do you think, it's sci-fi is going to keep some of the traditional literature readers kind of on the sidelines?
I think it's a great question. The Booker Prize can go either way in terms of sales here in the United States, right? Like Shuggie Bain was a Booker Prize winner a few years ago, in I think 2020, and that became huge. Prophet Song was last year. That was a really strong seller. But then, like before that, was a 7 Moons of Molly Almeida, and we only sold a few of those. That was not one that really had staying power. Did not really kind of break through the consciousness of American society, I guess. Orbital, I'm not sure. I think it could be kind of middle of the road. I've heard really good things about it. Our mother read it, and when it won last night, I texted her and I said, "How do you feel about it winning?" And because she's been reading the whole long list. She's read almost everything that was on the long list.
Is Orbital one of the ones that I brought back to her, actually?
Probably.
Is that one of the ones that she took to Bermuda?
I don't know. But
I think
she read it over. I don't know. But she said, "I think it's worthy." So
there you go. Yeah.
Liked it a lot. I did mention to somebody this morning in the shop that it had won, and they said, "Oh yeah, what's that about?" And I said something. As soon as I said space station, they were like, "Oh yeah, no."
Yeah.
So I do think people have just something against it being sci-fi or space, or I don't know. I don't really get it.
Yeah, I think people are sort of predisposed to not like science-y stuff, even if it's not science fiction. Because
I was going to say, it's not really sci-fi, right?
Right.
It's not.
No, it's right now. There is a space station, and there are 6 people on it, I'm sure. I mean, science-y in that, like, they feel like, there might be technical jargon that they don't know or whatever. People are sort of intimidated by space in general because it is sort of hard to wrap your head around.
Right.
What was
and
that?
I think you do say space and they think fantasy. So I think you do have to qualify it and say, no, it's all kind of based in reality.
Yeah, like astronauts right now, you know?
Yes.
I think that's
And you have a book like Andy Weir, those books are in space and people love those.
They do, yeah. But And I think that's the key. Is the reason I love the Andy Weir book is it is super technical, but ultimately it's a really simple story. It's like a relationship building story. It's, a guy talking to an alien,
Oh, yeah. Sorry. I was thinking of The Martian, which is a survival story.
Right. Which is, again, very simple. This guy's either going to die or not die. Right. And same thing, like they're either going to make friends or not going to make friends. Right. And it's a really there's not a bunch of characters to follow. And so I think you can keep the sciencey stuff accessible if you keep the story stuff really simple. I think I'm reading this, I'm still reading that Expanse series, by S.A. Andrews or whatever. And it's both, right? It has all the technical shit, but then it also has like 50 zillion characters. And, I think you have to really be a sci-fi head to enjoy it. I suspect that Orbital is, it's a tight story. If there's only 6 of them, it's probably like really sort of dialogue heavy, because I don't think they go anywhere.
And it's obviously literary. It won the Booker.
And it's literary, yeah.
But it's also super short. So I do feel like it appears accessible, which could help it in terms of people picking it up.
For sure.
So I don't know I'm on the fence, but I am interested in reading it myself, and we'll have a bunch in the store. So it'll be here for people.
Yeah, me too. All right, let's talk about books that we haven't read yet, but that we think will be big and are coming out sort of soon. For me, it's the Richard Price book, which I think came out like yesterday or something.
It did come out yesterday.
So that's called Lazarus Man. I haven't read it yet, but I am a big Richard Price fan. I read Clockers. I read Freedom Land. I think he is generally sort of controversial because he tends to write about race relations or class relations. They tend to be in the city. They tend to be very urban. And, what I like about him is that, there isn't like the good guy and the bad guy. Sometimes it's a cop story. Sometimes it's a journalist story. Sometimes it's just, a drug dealer story or whatever. But always really nuanced characters where you're not really sure who has the moral high ground, and, kind of shady stuff happens and people have to deal with it. And I just think he's really smart, and a lot of his stuff gets turned into movies too. So, he kind of tends to have a high profile. So I think it'll be a big book, but, we've been noting sort of lately about how career doesn't really have as much impact as it used to. It used to be like, oh, this big guy is going to release a book. We got to be confident that it was going to be a big book. Now that's less the case. Sometimes a big name, John Irving releases a book and no one cares.
That one was questionable.
That was also, I don't know anybody's going to read a 700-page book about a chairlift, but still, you just have much less ripple nowadays based on your reputation.
He's a big deal, and I don't know how that's going to sell. I do think, I hate being gendered, but it is a novel that would appeal to men. There are certain dudes who walk in and they just kind of tend towards a male author when they're reading fiction for whatever reason.
We talked about that. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that could be a good gift for a dude in your life who reads fiction.
What's a book that you're excited to come out?
Well, I don't know that I had one on my list that's really forthcoming, except for this isn't one we had talked about, Sam. We actually planned this episode, but I will mention the Serviceberry, which I have talked about on a previous episode. Yeah. The Serviceberry by Robin Wall Kimmerer comes out on the 19th of November. And I do think that also makes a really great gift book. I think, we're going to sell a ton, and it's going to sell well everywhere. Partly because everyone loves braiding sweetgrass,
right?
Which has been on the bestseller list for 4 years at least. And Serviceberry is a really small package, which for some reason seems like it makes a good gift.
Yeah, I mean, that's really just an essay that they turned into a book from what I can. Yeah. So that is the one book that I did read in the last 2 weeks because I was on a plane and I had it in my bag and I was bored. And so I was like, oh, I can crush this. And in general, I think it's a certain type of reader. Obviously, we've talked about it in terms of it's kind of anti-capitalist and, it talks about the wisdom of the indigenous, much like Braiding Sweetgrass does. And you have to kind of be open to that. Like it's very, especially like the open of the essay, it's very in the moment. I am eating this berry and it is crushing in my mouth and I'm recalling all of my, indigenous wisdom. And, it's certainly not a book for someone who needs like pace in their text.
No. Yeah, it can be a little slow at certain points, but it's really beautifully written and it has a point, it has a message.
Yeah, I think it's for your sort of like, hippie or hippie adjacent relative, someone who,
loves nature writing
yes.
and a little touchy-feely and is maybe not feeling so hot on American capitalism right now.
Very possible. Very possible. What about something that just you think is going to be big in general? I don't know. What's this Backyard Bird Chronicles book?
So Backyard Bird Chronicles is a book by Amy Tan, who many people know as a novelist. This is a nonfiction book, and it includes her illustrations about the birds in her yard.
Oh, she actually did the illustrations?
She did the illustrations. It's really a pretty book.
Do people know who Amy Tan is? Like, I feel like Amy Tan was a star in like the 80s. I was kind of like, is she still alive?
She is very much alive. Amy Tan wrote Joy Luck Club, right?
Right, but wasn't that like 1985 or something?
That was a long time ago.
Yeah.
For some reason,
I gotta look up
is occurring to me that she was in a band with Stephen King.
Oh, that's right.
That was like in the 90s.
Too. Yeah. Joy Luck Club. There's only reprints. I can't figure out when it came out, but yeah, that's been out forever.
It's been out for a long time. So actually, when I heard about Backyard Bird Chronicles, which came out a few months ago, I wasn't totally sure it was going to work, right? Because she's a novelist. It was like, okay, it's illustrated, but like, is she great at illustrating? I don't know. I mean, I saw some samples, but you don't know until you see the whole package. And the package was wonderful and her writing is lovely, of course. And it got some great attention and immediately went out of stock. And it's printed on this like flexi bound cover. The cover is like a flexi bound material, and it has full color illustrations in the interior. So for whatever reason, it took a long time to reprint. And in that time, we built up a bunch of back orders and people were asking if I was ever going to come out. They have now solved that problem. There is plenty of inventory. And I think some of that pent up demand could result in great gifts because not everybody got it when it came out a few months ago.
Right. 1989 is when Joy Luck Club came out. So that was 35 years ago.
I think she's had other books.
She has some other ones.
Remember,
Actually, not that many though. I'm looking through her stuff.
She seems very deliberate.
The Bone Setter's Daughter,
right?
Kitchen God's Wife, Where the Past Begins. I don't know. I haven't really heard of those.
Yeah, I mean that's another nature-y suggestion. People who are into birds, but also into nature writing. But just like it's a lovely gift. I think also if you don't know someone that well, like if you're going to a house party or your husband's boss's house for dinner, I don't know, like it makes a good gift for someone who's not your best friend.
So kind of similarly, I think if you need a present for like an older guy or just like a dude in general that you don't know very well, we have two really good sports books that are coming out or just came out for the season. The first one is people know that we are good pals with Chad Finn, who's at the Boston Globe, and he wrote the story of the Red Sox a couple of years ago. Did more edited the story of the Red Sox, where he took all of these great Boston Globe stories from the history of time and compiled them into this story of the Red Sox as told through the voices of the Red Sox. He's now done something similar with the Celtics, and he's got to be pretty excited that while he was working on it, they won the championship. That's a beautiful little capper on his book, I'm sure. So you get like the, championship write-ups and all that kind of stuff from him. And just in general, I think he has great taste. I think he loves sports for the reasons that I love sports, which is all the human stories. And, it's not so much more than the wins and losses. And, he loves characters. And so he's really great at kind of bubbling up those characters, tons of stuff to talk about. And then I also am excited for Why We Love Football by Joe Posnanski, which is kind of very similar to the Baseball 100 that was big 2 Christmases ago, or maybe it was last Christmas. 2 Christmases ago? I can't remember. But I highly recommend this. Like, I have a 17-year-old son who's not really a reader. And we've tried to give him lots of stuff to get him to be a reader and, what resonates and what doesn't resonate. And he loved the Baseball 100. And it's because it's so kind of easily digestible. You can read just one of the 100 chapters in an hour or something and feel like you've accomplished something. And lots of like cool stories that you can then go tell your dad. And I've been really pleased with, he just keeps reading the Baseball 100, goes back to it over and over again.
That's awesome.
I assume this will be really similar. So if you have like a sporty kid in your life, in the high school age range, I think this could be a great book for them. I know you don't want to give high school boys a book, but this one I think they will be excited about if they're sporty.
We've talked a lot about what to give dudes.
Yeah.
And my pick for what to give the moms, just to be really stereotypical about it,
yes,
is Ina Garten's memoir.
Oh, right.
Be Ready When the Luck Happens. And I think that's going to be really big. It's been really big. It came out a few weeks ago. And it's Ina Garten. When her cookbooks come out, we sell dozens and dozens. She does not have a new cookbook this year. She has her memoir. And I've been listening to it and she reads it. So it's a lot of fun to listen to her. And, a lot of people know her voice because she had that television show for a long time. And everybody knows about Jeffrey, her husband, because she talks about Jeffrey and she makes him dinner all the time in the show, which I've never really actually watched. But
everybody being a subset of the population that does not include me. But yes, yes. I understand what you're saying. Yes.
I can't believe none of this has filtered down to you, but
weird that I would not have,
But I've been learning a lot. I am not a, super fan. Like, I have a bunch of her cookbooks and I know about a lot of things about her, but I guess I haven't really watched the show or whatever. And now I'm reading the memoir and, I was particularly interested in the part where she purchases an existing store and takes it over. And I thought, okay, now we're going to learn how we're going to build our empire. We'll just do whatever Ina did.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, it's call up your friend Martha Stewart and see what she's doing. Is that?
Well, I think it's, put your shop in the Hamptons and have all the super rich people come buy all your shit.
I thought that's what we did already.
Yeah, but we don't have the same margins or the same growth opportunities, I think.
The Hamptons are a little bit bigger than Beverly Farms.
The Hamptons are bigger.
Yeah.
She started in West Hampton, and then at some point, very briefly, she had 2 stores, one in East Hampton too. And then East Hampton was just so much bigger and better. She closed West Hampton because it was too much to deal with. And the West Hampton shop for many years was just a seasonal store. So in the winters, she'd be, in New York and, kicking it, trying out recipes, whatever. So she wasn't actually like super huge until later, right?
Like she was never itself, making her living with the store.
I mean, she was, but her husband was also like an investment banker. So
exactly.
I don't know how much the store sustained their life. I'm sure it did pretty well. I think she made enough, but it seems like she didn't really become super huge until she published the first cookbook and then had her show, which was a Martha Stewart production. And that's as far as I am in the book right now.
Yeah. Well, I tried that with my Beer and Weed magazine because I know that Martha's pals with Snoop and likes to huff down THC gummies. but she wouldn't return my calls. So
Oh.
I tried that method of growing my business. It didn't work.
I will say Martha Stewart's brand new cookbook just came out. So if you're
Oh, that's
into
right.
Martha, you can go that route. I've heard her documentary is quite good. They've been hearing chatter, and I know a lot of people who've seen it. I have not watched it yet. I'm really interested. I'm also interested to hear, like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, I'm not down with Martha anymore. I just like, ever since she became friends with Snoop." And I was like, I don't see how that's a problem.
That's a bad thing. Going to federal prison, not a big deal, but hanging out with rappers, maybe a little questionable. That's
Controversial.
I don't know.
Anyway,
Seems like
I think
you're telling on yourself there.
Ina's memoir is also a good gift because it's a memoir that's just really nice, right? Like,
right. Some of these memoirs is like, here's the trauma that killed me. Here's the trauma that killed me. This one is less traumatic.
She had some tough childhood things, but it's, not so traumatic. And clearly she came out on top. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, good. I like that. That's great. Let's see. Oh, kind of along the same lines in the sort of nonfiction realm is I think people are going to be super excited for, and I think this came out this week, Rob Sheffield's new examination of the Taylor Swift catalog called Heartbreak is the National Anthem. And I don't think that's as much a biography as it is what Rob is really great at. He's one of my favorite music writers, actually. What he's really great at is using songs and albums and musicians as launch points for sort of cultural commentary or personal reflection or, just good writing in general. He used to write for the Boston Phoenix back in the day.
No way.
And now he's gone. I think he's, one of the probably top 5 most prominent music writers out there. Not surprising that he would get a crack at a Taylor Swift book by a major publisher. A book I often recommend to people is his Talking to Girls about Duran Duran. Rob is kind of the same age as me, grew up, with music in the same way. And, I think he is very similar in that music was often an entryway into like a group of people that he wanted to talk to, right? And, while boys might have been listening to like Van Halen and Metallica or whatever, sometimes you got into the Smiths because you wanted to talk to the girls who liked the Smiths. And sometimes you got into New Order because you wanted to talk to the girls who liked New Order. And, I think probably I was into Duran Duran when I was 6 years old because I wanted to hang out with Ryan Abernathy's older brother because he seemed cool. You always have like reasons for why you listen to things and why things are popular. And people are always kind of wondering out loud, why Taylor Swift? What does Taylor Swift do that's like so amazing? And it is definitely true that she, it's not like she's some wildly amazing musician or she has some wildly impressive voice or, I think her calling card is songwriting, but again, like there are songwriters that are just as good as her. And so what is it about her as a package? And I think so much of it is just she is a cultural touchstone. Like so many people still like Taylor Swift because they liked Taylor Swift when they were 14. And it's a sort of thing that they can carry with them and it's part of their identity. And they also love all the other people. Like one of our, at the booking agency I work for, one of the singers in one of our bands went to a Taylor Swift concert and fangirled out. And, I'm sitting there thinking like, you're famous all by yourself, but she just needed to be among her people. She wanted to have this big party with people that she knew were her friends. And it's kind of like, if you like Taylor Swift, you're good by me.
There are a ton of Taylor Swift books. There's a bunch of books about her style and what she wears. There are a ton of kids books that are kind of these like little biographies. There are like activity books. There's a dress, paper doll, Taylor Swift. The Rob Sheffield, I think, is probably the most serious. Yeah. And is definitely our pick for, if you pick one Taylor Swift book, I think this is the one.
I think if you want to understand Taylor Swift,
Yeah.
I think it's a great book for that. I don't think it's necessarily the book you buy for your 23-year-old niece or whatever because she loves Taylor Swift.
But we do have Taylor Swift Style, which is a great
there you go.
picture photo book. And I would also recommend, this is not a book, but one of my favorite novels of the year was Long Island Compromise by Taffy Brodesser-Akner. And she wrote a great profile of Taylor Swift for the New York Times Magazine.
Oh, she did? What?
She went to a Taylor Swift concert. And so it's about going to the concert, and it's more about the community. So sorry, it's not necessarily a profile of Taylor Swift. It's more about the community and
who are these
the
people?
marketing that, what drew people in and what brings them together, and the things that Taylor did to, the friendship bracelet thing was just a stroke of genius, and all of it. So I enjoyed that article too.
Let's see. Other things that we think are going to be popular. There's a couple of movies coming out that are going to drive book sales, we think. What are those?
So Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan is this fantastic little book. I'm sure you've heard us talk about it. You probably know it. It's been out here in the States for a few years now. It's one of my favorite holiday books because it's,
It's a Christmas book.
It's a Christmas book. So it's set in Ireland over the Christmas season in the 80s. And there's a moral conundrum, but it's a short little story with kind of perfect sentences, perfectly written. And it became a big hit. And so every year, I was thinking it wouldn't necessarily sell outside of Christmas, but it's just kind of sells all the time now. And now it's been made into a movie with Cillian Murphy as the main character. And people have been coming into the store today saying they've been hearing reviews on the radio. So local NPR must have run some reviews, or maybe national. And it's getting great reviews. And I can't wait to see it. And I think it's going to just sell even more books having that movie out.
Yeah.
And the other movie coming out, I think it's a limited series, is based on the book Say Anything by Patrick Radden Keefe.
Oh.
And that is a book about the Troubles. And it was one of the few nonfiction books on the New York Times Best 100 Books of the Century.
Really?
So that's all I hear is that it's just, one of the best books written in the past 20 years.
No, this is Say Nothing. Say Nothing.
What'd I say? Say Anything?
Yeah. I was like, wait a second. Is it Say Anything or Say Nothing? That's why I had to look it up. Say Nothing.
We just watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off the other night, and then we were talking about Say Anything. So that's been on my mind, I guess.
Right.
Say Nothing.
Say Nothing. And that's a true story. That's actually, it's not a novel. It's
nonfiction. It's nonfiction, yeah. It's about the Troubles. It's kind of a comprehensive history of the Troubles.
So it's like a biopic type of thing.
So those are both two movies and books.
Yeah.
Ireland.
I didn't realize there was an
really
Ireland connection when we set this up originally.
I know.
But look how thoughtful we are. That's
the other one I just thought of is Wicked.
Oh, yeah.
That movie's coming out, and that's a great book.
It is a great book. It's actually one of those books that has set me up for lots of other disappointments because I read Wicked by Gregory Maguire back in the day.
Yeah, I read it when it first came out.
And I was like, oh, what a cool reimagining of this story.
Yes.
I love this. This is really cool. And then that has made me read 3 or 4 other of his books.
Yeah.
And I get halfway through them and I'm like, oh my God, this book's so bad, and
no.
I've actually bought a couple of things. There's one about the swan.
Right, because he did a whole series then, right? Of other
sort of not fairy tales necessarily, but yeah, fairy tales. And I kept expecting them to be good, like Wicked, and
not so much.
I'm trying to think of what some of them are. There was
we don't need to know the bad ones.
There's Hidden Sea, which was the tale of the once and future Nutcracker. I tried reading that, and that was not happening.
Okay.
And then he has that Egg and Spoon book that's kind of for kids that I thought was going to be good, and it wasn't. Confessions of an Ugly Stepsister just wasn't.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one.
I don't know. It's just like maybe he's just a one-hit wonder, but he's gotten plenty of mileage out of Wicked. So I know. I mean, good for him on that one. But I don't know. He's one of those authors where I keep giving him another chance because Wicked was so good, and I keep being like,
Right.
like not so much.
Okay. Well, maybe you can stop now.
I know. But actually, at Wicked, I'm sure the theatrical production of Wicked is amazing. We saw it in Boston. It's super fun.
Oh, yeah. And the marketing for the movie has been really intense. It's like everywhere you look.
It's going to be a big movie.
Yeah.
Let's see. Do we talk? And
you had one last one.
I did. Well, so you had one last one too.
Oh, I do.
I think this is probably obvious, but I have been. We were looking up book sales totals the other day, and Kristen Hanna's The Women has not fallen off. Amazingly, not amazingly. It just like I didn't dislike it or anything, but. It's amazing the staying power it's had. Like it's just been such a consistent seller. It's already sold like 1 million copies, but I think it's going to be one of those books that everybody comes in and gives, as a present too, because it just seems to like keep working. I don't know.
I will say that I hear about it the most from women of a certain age, which is not surprising. They're, women who were young adults during the Vietnam era.
Yeah.
They feel seen and they feel like this is a really important book for them. And those are book buyers. So it's not surprising in any way. But yeah, people really love it. And I think they're going to be giving it.
Yeah. I think, she's sort of a well-established, writer in terms of people feel like they understand whether they like her or not. The Nightingale, they liked it or whatever, like she does her thing. But I think there's something about that Vietnam era and the age of those people in their 60s and 70s where we were talking about Vietnam does not get a very comprehensive treatment very often for whatever reason. And I do think this one kind of stands out as having a little bit more cultural sort of resonance than her other ones, which were more just like, oh, what a cool historical novel. This one seems to be speaking to our time a little bit more.
I think that's true. I think that's true.
Yeah.
My last one is a little bit of a shift here, but I have a pick for kids' books.
Oh, yeah.
And that's Impossible Creatures by Catherine Rundell. Reads like a classic. It reads it's a little bit like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There's a boy who kind of discovers this doorway to another world. And it's like through a lake. He goes through the lake and ends up in this archipelago. So it's a set of islands where all the magical creatures you've ever heard about really live. And
so it's kind of like a Land of Stories deal.
Yeah. And there's kind of this, there's magic that hides them from the rest of the world. But they're all in danger. Like there's something going on. There's the magic in the world is broken for some reason. And he meets this girl, when he comes through and she's on the run. People are kind of chasing her and she doesn't really understand why. And they end up on this ship with the kind of this like piratey dude and this super smart woman. And the girl he meets has a magic kind of jacket that she can kind of fly with. Anyway, the way it's written is really beautiful and just reads like a classic. It just reads like kind of old school. And it's just full of magic and lovely. And like, I definitely cried at the end. My 12-year-old Wells loved it. He did not cry, but understood why I did.
Right.
So it's a book that, like kids who love fantasy, like it's a middle grade book, but I also think it's like a great family read. Like I think parents could read it.
Read aloud book.
It's a good read aloud. Mm-hmm. So, and like adults can enjoy it too. So it's a good family read.
Yeah, I've been confused by it. I'm glad you raised it up because the cover looks so much like those Wings of Fire books that I thought it was like in the Wings of Fire series or something, because so I kind of wrote it off as like, oh, just another Wings of Fire book. But I will maybe I should give that a read.
It's awesome.
I do like a good classic children's book.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have come to the end of our list of books that are going to be big during the holiday season. Good news. We will have copies of all of them in our store. Should you want to order online because you have been trained to think that ordering online is the thing to do, you could order it from our very own website, which is bookshopofbeverlyfarms.com. All of these books are very easy to find on our website. In fact, if you go to the landing page for John Updike's Ghost, which you can find under the Cool Stuff tab, there will be a link to every single one of these books we've just talked about right there below the podcast link, which will make you just have zero effort at all to do all of your holiday shopping. And won't that be amazing? You can be done with your holiday shopping very quickly, maybe even before Thanksgiving if you wanted. And then you'd have all of Christmas to just chill out and twiddle those thumbs.
Well, you should buy yourself a book too and read that in all the free time you're going to create for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you operate better on Instagram, maybe Facebook, where you can find us there too, and you can message us. Facebook we don't love as much, but we're there.
We are there from time to time. I'm on
But
Blue
I know
Sky
a lot of
Did
people.
you know that?
I am on Blue Sky now.
I feel bad about myself for doing it, but I did it today because everybody was doing it. But whatever.
Well, sure. We'll see how it goes.
Pat and I, my boss, Pat, I like calling him
your
my
other boss.
I like calling him my boss because it's fun. We have decided that Thanksgiving is now Christmas halftime. So Halloween ends and Christmas begins on November 1st. And halftime of Christmas is Thanksgiving, where you have a little, kind of almost meal. And then you make it to Christmas, and that's full-time Christmas. So if you think of Thanksgiving as halftime, and I've heard that we have established we will be at your house for Thanksgiving.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, I was like, have you heard you're going to come to my house for Thanksgiving?
Mom told me earlier today, actually, when we were talking about various crazy things we had seen on the internet done by relatives of ours. So
can't wait to dissect that more.
It's going to be amazing. Maybe you'll hear about it on a future podcast. But
hopefully not, though.
Until that time, I think we are done for today. See you later, everybody.
Goodbye.